Good evening, everyone. This is Mike Romali here with the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for October 1st, 2019, recorded around 6:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A lot here to talk about, so we'll go ahead and jump in. We have Hurricane Lorenzo out here, which over the past couple of days has become a really intense hurricane, or was once a really intense hurricane, at a point becoming a Category 5 hurricane, the furthest north and east on record, becoming a Category 5 somewhere out in this region. And over the past couple of days, that has continued to move off towards the north-northwest and eventually off towards the north and east here, closing in here on the Azores. And this could bring some localized impact, or not localized, but some rather sporadic problems for portions of the Azores here, bringing tropical storm and hurricane conditions that are certainly possible. Right now we have a hurricane warning, rather, that is out for the entire Azores island here. We have hurricane warnings that are in effect for the entire area. You can see we already have some tropical storm force winds that are impacting a portion of the Azores right now, really on the furthest western Azores right now. And that will continue to spread over throughout the entire night tonight and then during the morning tomorrow. After that time, Lorenzo will continue to race off towards the north and east. This is moving at about 30 miles per hour off towards the north and east. It is still maintaining 100 mile per hour winds, so this thing will still pack a punch as the core is expected to come really close to the western portion of the western Azores here, and continue then off towards the north and east before eventually kind of making a hard right turn and potentially impacting the UK here sometime next week, or this upcoming weekend rather. So sometime then we do suspect that there could be issues down the road for here as sort of a bona fide tropical storm at that point. But at this point, this is still a Category 2 hurricane, sustained winds of 100 miles per hour here. And if we look here at the IR satellite presentation, you can certainly see that we've had a degrade of the eye over the past couple of hours. This has tried to off and on go under periods of intensification, and it did look like earlier that this might be under an intensification phase, but that has sort of transitioned now to the system that is not really looking all that healthy. You can see a lot of the convection here is getting wrapped around by some of this drier air, and you can notice this is dry, stable air here in the atmosphere that's sort of getting wrapped around into the backside of Lorenzo, which will ultimately cause the system to weaken, along with cooler sea surface temperatures and really not a lot in the way of actual support in this region just for intense hurricanes. Obviously, this far to the north, it's pretty rare to have a hurricane at this intensity heading right into the Azores. So certainly for the Azores, there will be some impacts. Tropical storm and hurricane conditions are likely in this area within the hurricane warning area, and we could have some watches and warnings go up then for portions of the UK here by later in the week here. This is by 2 p.m. Thursday. This is kind of running into this area. It is expected to slow down just a little bit here, and if we go to the latest tracks here, you can see that all the models are pretty much in good agreement that this will make that turn here within the next 48 hours. You can see this is sort of racing on off towards the north and east, and then eventually will make that turn off towards sort of the east-northeast and begin its trek over towards the UK, and then eventually most of the models are in decent agreement that this will make landfall again somewhere then in the UK region. So certainly some impacts coming from those regions, gusty winds, of course, very heavy rainfall, power outages, stuff like that can happen. The other one thing I do want to point out is that this will generate swells that will even reach portions of the Bahamas, Florida, the East Coast. Already seeing swells, and even down in towards the Cabo Verde Islands and certainly the Lesser Antilles, here in Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands. Radiating swells will come out well away from Lorenzo. Even though it is over 2,000 miles away, this will generate a large swell impact for portions along the east coast of the United States, the Lesser Antilles, and even the Cabo Verde Islands. So again, Those swells are known to produce rip currents, which can and have killed people. So we just kind of want to emphasize that there is the potential for dangerous rip currents this weekend along the U.S. East Coast, the Cabo Verde Islands, and the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, U.S. British Virgin Islands. Those regions could see some swells that are coming out from Lorenzo right now near the Azores. We also have two other systems here in the Atlantic to talk about, both with a 10% over the next 5 days. This system, both of them kind of sprouted up last night. This system here with a 10% here over the next 5 days. This generally heads off into the Yucatan Peninsula region, and then eventually, according to the National Hurricane Center, ends up somewhere in this region. Again, a lot of time to watch here, but we always have to watch this time of year, especially in this region with the very favorable MJO, Madden Julian oscillation that is kind of setting up over across this region, and that has kind of been persisting over the last couple of weeks. This region is pretty primed for development, and it does look more and more likely that there will be some sort of development here by mid-October, so certainly before October closes out. We also have another system to the north and east of the Turks and Caicos region in the Bahamas that will continue to move off towards the north and east and be of no significant consequence for Bermuda or the United States or the Bahamas at all, which is certainly good news at this point in time. Taking a look here, the visible or the IR satellite rather for the Western Atlantic, you can see certainly some strong upper level winds cutting across this area. Very unfavorable, rather in terms of the shear environment across this region, but over the coming days, this shear should start to relax, and you can see here our disturbance is kind of sitting off about in here somewhere. We have that disturbance kind of sitting right around in here. Some sporadic convection associated around here, nothing too significant, but we have seen decent convection activity. So again, heavy rain showers for portions of the Yucatan Peninsula, Cuba, those regions, even the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, those regions could see some heavy rain showers loosely associated with this broad energy, this broad area of low pressure that will continue over the next coming days to sort of move off towards the northwest here towards the Yucatan Peninsula. Again, we will have to watch here for any development in the Bay of Campeche, but at this point the models are not really indicating much of anything at this point. We also have our disturbance over here, which again is pretty loosely organized right now. There's still a lot of upper level shear that is kind of infringing on the system, not allowing it to really get going at all. So, and this will continue to move also off towards the north and east, providing of no significant consequence for the United States or the Bahamas at all. Here, taking a look here at the European model, this is the 12Z round valid for 24 hours from now. You can see Hurricane Lorenzo, which will be undergoing its extratropical transition, really starting throughout the night tonight and into the day tomorrow. And that will continue to head off towards the north and east north and east, really before bending east-northeast and impacting maybe portions of the UK later in the week. You can see here our innocuous little wave right here in the Western Caribbean near the Yucatan Peninsula. This is kind of our one wave that we're watching that the National Hurricane Center has highlighted, and another area of just general disorganized activity over there in the northeast of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. And by 48 hours here, you can see Lorenzo is impacting portions of the UK. There's our system right there with some broad turning according to the European model. This is 48 hours out valid. This is valid 12Z October 3rd, so this is valid at 8 a.m. on October 3rd, on this Thursday. Really by then, 48 hours, we'll also have to watch a disturbance coming off of Africa, which at this point has been off and on in some of the model guidance support, but at this point in time, it does not look like a significant threat, certainly, but we'll have to continue to monitor. Certainly, it would be a very late season Cabo Verde system if it were to develop out there, but certainly nothing to worry about at this current time. And by 96 hours, you can see our system, the National Hurricane Center is highlighting here in the Bay of Campeche, really with sort of a stouter ridge starting to set up here across the eastern Atlantic, sending pretty much this little wave right here, this little wave energy off towards the west. And certainly then by 120 hours, the European tries to get something going here, and also tries to establish some sort of something there in the southwestern Bay of or in the southern part of the Bay of Campeche. So certainly a lot to talk about here over the coming days. Again, the National Hurricane Center is watching these two disturbances here in the Atlantic Basin, one in the Western Caribbean and one northeast of the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas. We're obviously watching Hurricane Lorenzo, which will and already is starting its impact toward the Azores. Hurricane conditions likely there. Again, hurricane warnings are in effect for the entire Azores Islands here, as Hurricane Lorenzo will continue to make its final approach there to the islands, and will be passing throughout the night tonight and in through the morning tomorrow, and should have no effect by early tomorrow afternoon. So a lot to watch here over the next coming days. Again, I will keep on track of this. I will have another video discussion tomorrow going over these two systems and Hurricane Lorenzo. Hope you all have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you tomorrow afternoon.